Last month, on September 25th, among all of the other things going on, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, announced that he would not be rescinding the Medal of Honor for 27th Cavalry soldiers for their actions at Wounded Knee in 1890. This is significant. Let's break it down. Contrary to what you would have been taught in school, what happened at Wounded Knee in 1890 was not a battle. It was a massacre. It was one of the darkest days of American history. And now in 2025, the Secretary of Defense just decided on his own that the soldiers responsible for that massacre, well, they get to keep the nation's highest military honor. The date was September 29th, 1890, and near a frozen creek in South Dakota, the U.S. Army's 7th Cavalry had surrounded a group of Lakota families, men, women, children, mostly elderly men. Now, these people had already surrendered. They were on the banks of a frozen creek. They were starving, they were struggling, and the army had caught up to them. And on this day, the army came to them to disarm them, and a deaf Lakota man is suspected of not understanding what needed to happen when the army came to take away their weapons. Now a struggle broke out, maybe a gun misfired, and within minutes, Hotchkiss machine guns opened fire on the Lakotas. By the time it was over, more than 300 Lakota were dead, and more than half of those were women, children, and the elderly. The 7th Cavalry left their bodies in the snow, and the U.S. government called it a battle because about 25 7th Cavalry individuals were injured or killed. The problem? They were killed by friendly fire. Now, historians and Native people have always called it what it really was, a massacre, but the government continues to call it a battle, the last one of the Indian Wars. After that slaughter on that cold December day, 20 soldiers from the 7th Cavalry Unit were awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest award a U.S. soldier can receive from this nation. They were literally decorated for killing unarmed families. For decades, tribes and historians have fought to have those medals revoked. Even Congress weighed in, calling the massacre a national shame. And after years of lobbying for this, in July of 2024, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin commanded that a review board be put up to determine whether or not these medals should remain in place. And the goal of that was to ensure no awardees were recognized for conduct inconsistent with the nation's highest military honor. The Pentagon even put out a statement that said it's never too late to do what's right, and that's what is intended by the review that the Secretary directed, which is to ensure that we go back and review each of these medals in a rigorous and individualized manner to understand the actions of the individual in the context of the overall engagement. Now fast forward to September of 2025, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth posts a video online on Twitter, and he says the Pentagon Review Panel decided the soldiers should keep their medals. The problem is the Pentagon Review Panel decided no such thing. Pete Hegseth decided that this was just wokeness and against warrior ethos, and he claimed he was reviving those warrior ethos by rejecting these woke politics. He called the events the Battle of Wounded Knee, not the massacre that we know it is today. The full report hasn't been released, not even to Congress, even though they've demanded it. And one of the panelists says that the situation was flawed from the outset because they were told to look at individual actions and not the bigger picture, that this was a mass killing of civilians. And even the report that they did provide as a preliminary report was overwritten, and the draft was highly changed by Pete Hegseth. Now, as expected, Native leaders and historians are outraged over this. They've said that it is despicable and insulting, that it dishonors the victims and it repeats history's lies. Historians have come out and said that calling it a battle is a misrepresentation of history. Even the Equal Justice Initiative said the decision dishonors Native Americans all over again, and Senator Elizabeth Warren has introduced legislation to revoke the medals anyway. But for now, that decision stands because it rested with Pete Hegseth. Wounded Knee wasn't a battle. It wasn't bravery. It was genocide. And handing out medals for it and then refusing to take them back 135 years later, that isn't about honor. That isn't about a warrior ethos. It's about rewriting history to protect the white image, the white idealism. Now, white Americans have never learned the true history, and if they have, they're unable to confront it because you don't want to admit the harm that your race caused on others, even as some celebrate it when they do learn about it. And the truth about Wounded Knee is it was a massacre. It targeted women, children, and the elderly intentionally for no other reason than these people were taught to hate others. And we're seeing that repeat itself today in the United States.